cautious, Miriam, would you say you are right now in this investing environment?
Well, I've been in Silicon Valley since 1982, so I've gone through many cycles here. And one of the things that tends to happen is that there's a bit of overreaction oftentimes when we have these big dips in the public stock markets, as well as financings that have kind of become so large and have promoted growth at all costs, including profitability. And eventually the pendulum swings in the other direction, but it tends to swing too far. And that's what we're seeing now.
As I understand it, your firm actually made a record number of investments in the last quarter, 20 investments, I believe. Why is that?
Well, we look at risk-adjusted return, and while we have seen the risk go up, and we account for that in terms of how we make investment decisions and in our financial models that we use to power our process, what we see is that a lot of folks they overreact to the news. They don't know where to actually look at increasing the risk in their models, and oftentimes that generates fear, just fear, and makes people hold back capital at a time when actually it's a good time to be investing, because many people are sitting on the sidelines and not sure how to price. And our financial process really allows us to price at the seed stage very well and to encompass that additional risk in still trying to achieve the same 10x probability weighted multiple that we look for in each investment.
Well, let's talk about that pricing, because it seems investors would be at an advantage right now. You know, we're hearing about flat rounds, down rounds, obviously that we're seeing layoffs. There's talk of more layoffs. What's actually happening behind the scenes, as these investments are continuing to be made?
Those are many of the things that are actually happening. You've described very well. But a lot of that is really happening at the later stages in venture, where the pricing impact of what happens in the public capital markets has a larger impact. What tends to happen in the earlier stages, such as seed, is that you don't see such large fluctuations in valuations as you have seen recently, kind of towards the end of these cycles where people are doing growth at all costs. You tend to have higher pricing at the seed stage, but not as much as at later stages. And so we do see people doing more flat rounds. We haven't seen a lot of down rounds yet in our portfolio, but I do think that that is not an uncommon thing to happen. And these kind of holding the price constant right now often does help entrepreneurs to get additional capital so they can weather these cycles. And these cycles tend to be, less than a couple of years for the most part. So as long as they're well situated, it's not your price today. It's kind of where you think you can be 2 years from now in terms of the metrics and outcomes that your investors are going to be looking for at that stage. That's really important.
Now, very successful companies were founded during downturns. The most recent downturn, Airbnb, Slack, Instagram, Square, you go back to the 80s, Microsoft was founded during a downturn. How optimistic are you that one of these world-changing companies is being founded right now?
Well, I'd say that there are more of these world-changing companies being founded today than ever before, and across more technology sectors than ever before. So I'm very optimistic. I am a very long-term investor and believe that technology stocks are a place where both individual investors and institutional investors should be, because the wave of technology that is occurring now in terms of the market sizes that are possible on the internet, there are 5 billion users on the internet. When I first started in 1995 as counsel on an IPO for an internet company, there were 39 million users. So these markets are vast. They've never been possible to access in this way before, and they're going to continue to be a dominant force in the economy moving forward.
So curious, Miriam, what your thoughts are on Andreessen Horowitz recently writing its biggest check ever to Adam Neumann, obviously controversial founder of WeWork. There's been a lot of criticism of this. We also spoke to a founder earlier in the show who praised the decision by Andreessen Horowitz. What's your take?
I'm always of two minds. One is I believe that people make mistakes, and I don't believe in canceling people. I also believe that we have really benefited as a technology sector from some of the work of WeWork. Before, companies used to have fixed costs in terms of real estate space, and now more and more companies have a much more variable approach to what was really once a very large part of their cost curve. So these kinds of innovations, they do come with good and bad. I remember in your book, you talked about kind of the brotopia and the culture of venture and also entrepreneurship in Silicon Valley. And I definitely have a lot of issues with that as well. But I also recognize when innovation has really changed how work gets done and where it gets done.
So here's my question. I'm not against second chances either, but I think the criticism is that shouldn't we give some people first chances first? And so many people, like many women, people of color, founders, haven't even gotten that first check or that first chance. Do you think the venture world is actually changing, or is what happened here, you know, an example that it's not?
This is a really good question, and we came into existence to actually give people those first chances at seed. And the idea is that right now, you know, maybe less than, we're still like in 1947. If you think about when Jackie Robinson entered baseball, there were 0.9% Black players, 0.7% Latinx players. You see the big difference in the major leagues now, where talent is really what is driving who gets to play. And I think that that is the opportunity in front of venture. And those that are not seeking that opportunity will get left behind, because 70% of the population can't be inferior to 30% of the population.